So how do these ecosystem problems start? So the way I see it happening, and I've seen this over and over again, so there's no science, I didn't do a study on this. This is the school of hard knocks and experience speaking at this point, having been doing this stuff for about 20 years. Everybody starts off with an accounting system, right? One of the first things you need is to keep track of your expenses even before you have revenue. But sooner or later it says, you got to get QuickBooks or whatever it is. And almost always it's set up by your CPA or tax CPA. And I love tax CPAs just as much as anybody, especially when they find me money and I get big fat refunds. But the problem with tax CPAs is that, like anybody, they're a specialist and they come at the world with a particular view. And they do that when they set up your accounting system. And I can give you a real prime example of this. I just engaged with a new customer and I took a look at their accounting system. And this is a company that's already pretty sizable. They have, more than a couple of dozen employees and all of their payrolls in one line item on the P&L. They don't know what their marketing cost is. They don't know what their gross margin is. They don't know what their R&D expense is. They don't know what their G&A expense is because nobody's breaking out the people into the departments. And the reason that that's a problem, if you can probably imagine what kind of a problem that is for running the company or analyzing it, but that's typically what I come across. And so a lot of these important SaaS metrics like cost to acquire a customer, you can't get it because you don't have marketing and sales information that's easily extractable. And more important, gross margin. Huge metric when it comes to the SaaS business is your gross margin. And if you don't know what that gross margin looks like, you're going to have trouble with your valuations. You're going to have trouble with your investors because one of the first things they're going to want to make sure that you're doing is keeping that SaaS gross margin really fat and happy. The next thing usually is the CEO or the founder finds a budget spreadsheet. And yay, a buddy has it, or you find one on the web, or you go out there and you download one, or maybe it was an incubator gave you one to work with, or could have been a CFO service out there said, here, it's a great one. The problem with those that we find, and we'll talk about spreadsheets and their problems in and of themselves here later on, but the biggest problem with these that I found is they're not really connected to your accounting system. So you'll be projecting something on your budget, and then sooner or later, you've got to translate that into what the accounting system is doing. And here's a prime example. You're probably budgeting your payroll based on, what department and the headcounts within the departments. But if your accounting system only has one great big line item, how can you ever possibly know what your actual versus budget is, or whether you're actually hitting the performance in a particular department that you need? So having a budget spreadsheet that's not connected to your accounting system is a real big miss and can create a lot of aggravation and wasted time. Sooner or later, of course, you're going to have employees, and usually sooner, the payroll system is going to get selected. You go out and you grab Gusto, or you grab Bamboo or ADP or whatever it happens to be. But what happens is nobody really sets up any departments in there. And so again, this comes back to that accounting interface. You're going to get your payroll information, but you're not going to know who is in what department or what the costs are by department. So again, you're going to be missing really critical business management information by not having your P&L broken out correctly. Then somewhere you're going to get a CRM. It could be Salesforce, could be Nutshell, could be HubSpot or whatever it is. And usually the sales team or the marketing team sets that up, but they're not, I can tell you right now, sales and marketing people are not thinking about accounting. I know that may come to you as a shock, but they're probably not thinking about accounting and finance. But the accounting and finance folks, we're the ones that have to take those orders and turn them into invoices. And this also goes back to what Clayton was talking about and those signed contracts and keeping account of those. If those aren't integrated fully into the system, into the ecosystem, and standing alone out there, you're going to have that fire drill when you try to find those customer contracts, or accounting is going to be asking you and peppering you with questions. So what's the subscription start date? How much was that? What's the expansion on that? And then your sales team is bogged down and slowed down by answering questions that has nothing to do with growing the top line. So this is how the problems start. It's not like it's done by plan or somebody says, hey, I'm going to go out and I'm going to create what's called the tech pile. What they're going to do is they're going to go in and just pick things, and then sooner or later, this is what you end up with, is a pile of technology. You've got apps that are siloed, so they're not talking to each other. So you run into this, especially as you get larger. Somebody buys a tool. Well, you already have two of them in-house. Why did you go buy a third one? So you're wasting money. They don't talk to each other, so you have process holes. Probably because nobody thought about, well, gee, maybe we should make sure that this, the customer success management system is hooked into our recurring revenue system so that we know when customers are up for renewal. so we can go out there and make sure that, A, they renew, but beforehand, make sure that they're being nurtured and cared for. Or what that example I gave you before, conflicting numbers. You have one system that says your ARR is this and another one that says that, or another one that's even worse. Accounting says this is how much we invoiced in the period, and Salesforce has a different number. So those kinds of things basically just continue to increase that aggravation and wasted time in the back office. And then, as we talked about, it can block due diligence, just straight up bring it to a halt, while suddenly everybody's got to scramble and find whatever document it is or whatever record that's needed. So in the end, this tech pile and the way it grows ends up in just a tremendous amount of wasted time and money.